Okay, you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
We're all good. Okay, morning everybody. Thank you for coming on today. Sorry about the technical issues. Standard, really. But anyway, today we're going to hear about.
Can you hear any background noise? I'm sorry if you can, because I live on a building site,
exciting.
and today it's just a particularly noisy.
So just in terms of
the building site.
session today, my name is Chris Watson, and I am chair of SDS Network England.
If you hear any background noises,
just in terms of
try and get to mute as quickly as possible.
Our agenda today, we're going to hear from Michael Jimmy, very kindly joining us from the northeast.
Obviously, say hello. Welcome to
a little bit about how
today's session, which is going to be around understanding third-party personal health budgets.
Service fund arrangement,
which I think is a very interesting area for me.
A question answer session afterwards.
A lot of time working in the individual service funds.
Is that right with you, Michael Jimmy? Happy with that?
Yeah, that's
pretty
comfortable. What's going on in that space, but not so necessarily about what's happening
just in terms of
side. So, chatting to Claire and Debbie a while ago, we very kindly agreed to come talk about the practical experience.
Citizenship.
We're working very much in the space
members now, and that's part of Citizenship's wider
exploration of
now
what's happening,
community.
What's working well, what's not working well,
international
compared to individual service funds. There's lots of
similarities, but there are definitely some differences around the world. And we have.
My name is Chris Watson.
Commissioner Network host
around 300
members
in England.
We have
just over, just so got 71 councils. Is for people who don't know, it's a global movement for self-direction.
The aim of the network is really citizenship. People who want to reform and improve the system. People living experience
across the world.
Practitioners, families, part of the networks wider can improve care services for everybody.
Yes, we have 12 national hubs.
Just do a little shout out to our network sponsors.
Best practice to run the network across different countries.
Funding from our amazing sponsors.
We have over 300 commissioners now. See what they offer. 72 councils. So
just in terms of
slowly creeping up, which is amazing.
Michael, do you want to do questions at the end rather than questions as you move in through
this information?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Is that better for you? Yeah. Okay. So so if people could just
and our mission, I guess, just
you to join the presentation. That's amazing. Feel free to post any questions in the chat, and I'll shape those up with Michael Jimmy at the end. And obviously just be respectful.
We're very all grateful
contributions, and we will also
sponsors who
record the webinar as well. So if that's an issue,
support network, which allows us to run these events for free.
Please. So hopefully. Thank you very much.
It's appreciated because money's tight at the moment for everybody. So
I'll switch over to your slides.
Today's session, again, just going over that.
Start to record
a presentation from Claire and Debbie. Claire's obviously can introduce herself in a second. So Debbie, but we'll run through some slides, and then I think we're going to have a open forum, just a question and answer session, and give you a chance to to get into the weeds a little bit around that Sono's work and third-party budgets.
Microsoft slow brains. Okay, no, we already are recording.
To hand over to your slides now, guys.
Right.
I'm going to talk first, if that's okay, Chris,
and
then we'll go to the slides. Is that okay?
No problem at all. Yeah, I'll come out of slides. I'm going to share
it over to Michael and Jimmy. Just
okay. Good morning, everyone.
It's working.
Just check you can hear me.
Is that showing up okay for you?
Yeah,
it's fine, Chris.
Brilliant. Right.
Please let me know.
Cool.
Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning coming to listen to us. What I thought I would start with is obviously explaining a little bit about Sono, because I think our journey as a company, and we are 15 years old, 14 years old.
I play football sometimes.
It's quite useful for people just to understand where we came from and how we've got to the position that we are now. So the company came about in 2011 as a result of a change in our family circumstances.
Support living normal dimensions of March
things that
2020.
You deal with on a day-to-day basis in your own area.
March 2022
we had to deal with as a family suddenly and overnight. My brother-in-law decided to have a bizarre accident and fall off the wall and caused a C4 to C6
24
cut basically in his spinal cord, which left him tetraplegic. And so overnight as a family we were plunged suddenly into healthcare, and actually how did this family navigate a scenario that none of us were expecting to be in. And I know that many of you will deal with people like that on a daily basis, either because they've had accidents like our family went through, or sadly they may have children born with conditions that need support and moving forward. So
to make sure
As
that
a result
was
of our experience,
able
Stephen spent a
to
year
do
in
things for
spinal injuries
myself
unit in
so
Sheffield
that
before we could actually
I
get him
would
home.
need support
And
with
once we
me
got him home,
during
that
the
was after
day
some
and during
modifications to
the
the house
night.
in order to be able to
I
get him
moved
back
into my
the
own flat
house.
in Hartlepool in
There was a lot of debate with
2023
Nottinghamshire
with
in the early days
Dimension
because initially our first option was a
Find
residential
Out
care home
Support.
for him,
Thank you.
which with a young child of 10 months old we did.
Well, I'm not Sarah, I'm
at that
Angie,
particular point in
Stephanie.
time for her to
So
be
I'm the
going there on
locality
a daily
manager for
basis
Dimensions
to
and
see
I
Dad
support
with Mum.
Michael and Jimmy and
And
managing
then
staff team with
eventually
them.
he did move home and we had a very
Part
traditional
of the role
domiciliary
we do
care
act as
agency that
brokers
came in.
and we
But again, that really
research the
didn't work
work
for
of
us
the
as a
people
family,
supporting the locality.
partly because
So we
we
pay
had
things
different
like
teams of
Jimmy,
people
you
turning up
wanted
each
to
day.
do personal
And
training,
actually with a
didn't
young
you? So
child
we
under the age
sorted
of 1,
out
that was really
personal
quite
trainer for
disconcerting
Jimmy.
for her with different
And obviously
groups of
we need to
people
make sure
turning up.
they're paid. So we
And
do
my
that
sister
for
felt that there had
finance.
to be a better option for
Uh,
us as a family, and there were
We use
surely other
community
people out there in
connections,
similar
assistive
scenarios. So
technology.
she ended
So
up on the
you didn't want to
pilot
be woke
scheme
up on a
for
morning,
third
did you,
party
Jim?
with
So we
the
used
Department of Health
walkie-talkie, so we
back
didn't
in the
need to
late
pay staff to
noughties,
come in.
and was
We
part of the
had
steering
assistive
group with that, going
technology,
down
just
to the
roaming,
Department of
just
Health.
checking when you
And
first
out
moved
of
in,
that
didn't you, to see what
emerged
support you
solo
wanted.
support services. And
Michael,
so for
you've
the
got a
last
buddy, haven't you?
14 years, 15
So
years, we
we
have
paid
been
by the
involved with
local authority
supporting a
to pay
whole range
commission to
of
support Michael and
people
Jimmy, and we
with
support them
various
through
disabilities and
ISF's
various
individual service
conditions
funds.
to live in their own homes with a team of people who support them on a daily basis. And this was what my family actually wanted, was actually we had a team. We had a grand team of people that actually worked with us, came on holiday with us, spent Christmas Day with us, spent birthday celebrations with us. They became part of our family. To this day, my niece is still in contact with many of the carers that supported her dad and her mum during the time when her dad was alive.
We couldn't understand the wrong words, so we make it in layman terms so we can understand it. So we changed the name
can have a massive
my
impact
support
on family
money,
life and
so
have a
that we
massive
understand a bit
impact on
better.
your network at that point.
We wanted
that's
to
how
include our
Solo came
circles of
about.
support to understand
And
my
we
support
gradually
money.
started with just a few
Time to
clients,
train
based from
the
a dining
family.
room to now
We didn't
operating
understand
out of
what
our
good and
office
bad
with
support
50
looked
head
like.
office staff, 150
We need to
clients, and
understand our
600
rights,
staff across
understand
the
the
country.
case, care
So,
acts,
you
which
know, we have 600
Jimmy's
PAs
learning
working
about with
for
Chris
us,
Watson.
with
We
150
need to
different
understand
clients across the
budgets and
country,
dimensions to
with a
give
whole
us
range of
this
packages that run
information
from just 20 hours a week through
in
to
easy
those that
to
are
understand
350
format.
hours,
We need to
24/7
understand
two-to-one
who
care.
decide,
So
we need
we
to
deal with a
understand the
whole
decision
range
makers are for
of
my
people. So Debbie's going
support
to take you
money.
through our process of how we actually deal with it. What I would say at this point in time is I know as commissioners and people that deal with a whole range of scenarios, what we present today is maybe just the tip of the iceberg, and we are always open to discussion about how we may be able to support. We don't go with a one size fits all model. We are very much about actually trying to create bespoke packages for people that is right for them in the situation that they are in. That can often lead to quite a lot of negotiation, as Debbie will tell you. Often she can work on a package for 6 or 7 months before we actually go live. And sometimes the packages don't work out. I would say, you know, our model doesn't work for everybody. And Debbie will make that clear. It is a three-way process as far as we're concerned. And actually, the three different
all get
teams
involved
need
in
to
our
work in
weekly plans to
collaboration with
make
each
sure
other
we
for
aren't
this to be
being
an effective way
over
of
supported and
working.
make choices how we
I'll let me take you
can
through the
get
whole
supported.
process, talk you through what we do,
We
and then
choose
at the
who
end we're
supports
more
us.
than happy to take
Staff
as
are
many
matched
questions as
depending on
people
the
want at
activity.
that particular point. I'll try not to.
We then give this
but I might
information to
occasionally.
the 27 alongside how much
Thank you,
things
Claire.
cost, so we have money in
I will share
total.
my screen.
Basically, that's how 24.
Yeah, that's a good one, yeah, Jim.
Yeah.
Right, Martin, Jim. This is our
So you
weekly
can all
planner.
see that.
So what we have planned with friend and family
Everybody-
who
yes,
will support me,
yes, fab.
support.
Right, so the package today is
Tom's,
understanding
thank you.
third-party personal
Thanks,
health,
Chris.
budgets, but there's also I'm going to touch on ISFs as well in social care.
Your turn.
So
Basically,
good morning,
this is the
everybody. Welcome to Solo. Thanks to Claire for her
that was just
introduction.
mentioned before. And this
The
is
third-party arrangement of
basically,
a personal health
we get
budget
our
is core really
support
to
money in
Solo's
the pot,
business,
then
and we
we pay
support
for
many
our
ICBs
activities,
across
this,
the
that.
country to really
And
deliver
all,
complex
whatever's left we
packages
put
of
back into the
care
pot for the week
in health,
after.
Complex health.
So it's quite, we know what we're doing then, you see.
I lost myself and I had to come out. Give me a second. There you go.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So with complex health, which we have many packages with learning disability and autism, particularly with behaviours that challenge or
We use
behaviours of distress.
planners
And
for
within social
fest
care,
and
we're
then
starting to work
in
with
different
more local
parts
authorities
of the
to offer
grid.
individual
And say
service
that is the
funds.
cost of the different activities and else the outcome for our
Yes.
our
So what is a
support.
personal health budget?
But
So a
everyone can
personal health
understand
budget is
this
described
24
as a
grid,
pot
which
of
is
money
why we
specifically for a client.
asking for virtual
It's
wallets
based on
for some
assessed
people.
need by a professional. It also needs to be
Because what
outcome based on what the
we
client would
need
like to
virtual
achieve.
wallets
And
because
this
we
is
don't
really
know
all based on a primary
what's
health
left.
need
We know what we're
and
spending,
becomes
but we
known as a
don't know how much
continuing
is left in the
healthcare
pot.
pot of money really
So
in
we're
adults
getting
and
virtual
continuing
wallets.
care pots
Then
of
we
money
know
in
how much we've
children.
got left, so we
So really
can
it's a
work
pot
from
of
there.
money used to
We
spend
do
to
come
meet somebody's
down
needs. It's not a
with
new pot
us
of money,
and
it's an
cook
assessed
for
need, and
each
that pot of
other
money just needs to
each
be used
night
differently.
to use our support.
In social care, a personal budget is
Yeah,
exactly the
so
same. It's
instead
just a
of
pot
a-
of money that is being
if you
assessed
live with
by a
another person as
professional
well, don't you,
for
in
a
a block of
person
flats?
to
Yeah,
be
block
used
of
to
flats.
meet
So instead
their
of needing
needs.
3 staff
We can at Solo can offer
to do
both of
tea
these. So we
time
offer the
meals,
third
we
party
come
arrangements in
down with me,
health,
so
and we
the
can
all
offer an
take turns,
individual
don't
service
you?
Yeah,
fund
yeah.
in social care.
And
But
to
there are
cook
differences which
each
I'll
night,
explain
don't
to you in
you?
a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So
For
they
both
don't
of
need
these
3 staff, we only
services,
need 1
where
between the
we
3,
become
and
an
they take
employer,
turns in
we
each
are care
staff and we call
quality,
it,
we are
come down with me.
regulated by the
Yeah.
Care
Right,
Quality
right.
Commission,
We're about
and we are an
walkie-talkies. Michael ran
organisation that is
through for
independent
to
of the
me
individual
on a morning
and the
to
NHS
get
for the
him
local
out
authority.
of bed.
And we
They
hold the
save money for the
funds and
staff.
arrange the care and
Have our
support.
start
So we do
early
both.
when
We hold the funds
one needs
and we then arrange
their
the care
support.
and
Then
support.
because
So
Michael
there are actually
walkie-talkie
3
Jimmy
ways
up
of receiving
the
personal health
means
budget.
staff can start
One is a
late.
notional budget, which
This
again you would
means
have in
Jimmy
health and social
was
care,
able
and this is
to
generally
use
a traditional
us
domiciliary care
the
agency
money
would
to
provide that
pay
care.
for their personal
You then have a
training
third party,
to help
again we would refer
with
to this in health, so a
his
third party provider such as ourselves would
physical
offer
health.
somebody a third
Thank
party
you
with
So
their
you
personal
walk
health
Michael up, you
budget.
walk
So
Jimmy
they're
up, Michael,
eligible
on a
for
morning,
continuing
Yeah,
health
yeah.
care. They
walkie-talkie,
opt to have
to
a
save
third
paying for
party,
staff.
and
Yeah,
we
yeah.
could be a
Put staff
provider
there.
and we
Later.
support them to do
That's
that.
what mine is. On
In
Jimmy's.
addition, you can also have a direct payment. Again, this
Some of our
refers to health
support money
and
pays
social
for a
care.
taxi to get
And
us to
typically in
the
this arrangement,
theatre
the
or music
client
events
would
where
be
we
the
can go without
employer,
support.
and they would employ their
But
own PAs.
I don't able
You can
to
then have an
stay
individual
for the
service
taxi
fund,
and
which is
start
in
to
social
go.
care, which is very, very similar
Michael's
to
internet
third
system travels
party
as far as
budget
Anthony and
with
Jimmy's
continuing health
plans,
care.
so they're
So
shared, and this can help
I want to really
Michael get
focus on
his
an
to
ISF and a
share
PHB because
Jimmy's mobility
the
car.
arrangement of how they work is
When
very,
Jimmy
very
was
similar,
first
but there are
support, he
some
didn't want the car,
constrictions
so
in how it can be
company
delivered.
hadn't included drivers. Dimensions
So
pay
I'm sure
for staff to
you
learn to
know the
drive.
social care pathway to
Without
personal
drivers,
budget.
we
Somebody will have
would
an
have a car but
identified
not
care need.
able to go
They may
anywhere.
require support for washing, dressing, or
Yeah, but now you've got
medication
your
or
own
prepping meals.
internet now,
They will
haven't
then
you?
speak
Yeah.
to somebody within the local authority.
That's what
A
mine.
care
That's
assessment
our
will take
circular
place.
support.
Yeah.
And I think
Someone
one of the key
explain that.
things that came
It
out of the
is
care
important
assessment
we
was the
have
fact that
people
a person's
we trust
well-being
to
needs to
help
be
us
considered
when
to support
we
their
need
safety
it.
and independence.
So what
You
it
see a
is,
lot more
I've
of
got
this
friends,
in
family,
social
and
care
my friends
than
who
we
I
do
live
in
with
terms of health
in share
and way the
accommodation
funds can
in
be
a
spent.
flat
I
out
think it's due to the
downstairs.
complexities of diagnosis and
Anthony's up
things, but I'll
the
come on
second
to
flat
that.
and Jimmy's on the third floor
So if
flat.
somebody is eligible for
And
support with
we do
care,
tea every
a
like
financial
what Andrew
assessment
just
would
said,
then
and
be
so it's
completed.
really good.
This
Thank you so
determines their
much.
contribution to care
And that's me
costs.
support work
Remember, in
and
social care,
family and
people
stuff.
contribute to cost. In healthcare, people
So we
don't
have monthly
contribute to their health
MDTs, don't
need.
we?
And I'll show
With
you
your
the
nurse
which
and
I'm
the funds
meeting
go down that
monthly
way.
with management system
Then
managers,
somebody would be
support,
awarded
workers,
or
community nurse,
provided
advocates
with a personal
to look
budget,
at what's
and that budget
working
can
and
be
what's not
used to
working, and
meet
then have a
their
plan.
needs, really
Have
in a
reviews of social
person-centered
work every
way.
year to
And
feedback
that
from
personal budget can be
meetings.
held
We don't
either
ask
by a
permission, we
traditional
inform them
domiciliary care
of
agency,
what
they
we
can receive a
done
direct
throughout the
payment,
year.
or this new option
People
that's
have different
becoming
roles in my
more
support
and more
teams. Mike,
available,
Flo,
an
Sharp chose who
individual
I speak
service
to and
fund,
what.
which again is very similar to third-party
Some
arrangements,
decisions
and I'll
revolve over
explain how that
people who
works.
are my friends.
If you were then to move on to
Our
health,
support
your
from the skills
healthcare
for people
pathway
to
would be
make
very
sure
similar,
everyone's
except when you got to
voice is
the
there and
stage
independent
of
of
your care act
dimensions.
assessment, they would identify that there's actually a health need that needs looking at.
That's Jimmy's
What then
floor
happens
chart.
is a referral can be made to a GP,
Oh
a
yeah.
physio,
Oh,
an
how will we
OT,
support our
and what
decision
we call a
making? Jimmy's floor
checklist is
chart.
completed.
Who
This
do we speak
checklist
to?
will also go through 11 domains. The idea of a checklist is to see whether if they pass the checklist, that would then be moved on to a decision support tool. This is quite a large document. I've left a link for, I've got a link for it
Thank
on the end
you
of
for
this
listening
presentation.
to us.
And a health
Any
professional
questions?
a social care professional and a health professional would need to be in
Thank you
attendance,
so much.
as well as anybody else involved in that person's care. So you could have your learning disability nurse, you could have the epilepsy nurse,
Thank you, guys.
anything to do with
That's
that
awesome.
person. Everybody's in
As always.
attendance. 11
Yes.
domains
No
are
problem,
worked
Chris.
through.
Much
Each of these
appreciated.
domains
So,
have a
let's see.
score
Have
rating
you got
to them,
any
and depending on the
specific
outcome of that, a primary
questions?
health
I'm
care
just
need
checking
would
the
be
chat. Don't
identified.
see anything in
It's
the
not
chat.
at all based on diagnosis. It's based on a primary health care need. And generally what is
Is the sound
looked
okay,
at,
actually? Sorry,
not
there is.
generally, in every,
Is there a
in
question
Yeah, we can
coming
still
back?
hear you.
intensity, the complexity or unpredictability of the need. If
Okay,
a primary
sorry, Rachel's
health
coming
care
in. Hi,
need is
Rachel.
identified, that person is eligible
Hi,
for continuing care
I'm
funding.
absolutely
Ideally,
fantastic,
they
wonderful
should then be
presentation.
offered either
We
a
certainly
notional
find
budget,
with
a third-party
direct
budget,
payments
or a
that
direct payment.
using
These
taxis
clients
and
are
transport and
generally
those sort of things
very
are
complex.
local authorities really
They generally
struggle
get
with
to the stage
understanding
when
that it's a
every other
free
provider
activity
or
you're
traditional
going to.
agency
You're
hasn't
going under
worked,
your
or
own
they've
steam,
tried a
so
direct
you're not
payment
using
and it's been too much
support.
to
So
manage,
it's kind of
as well as looking after family, as well as looking after clients.
yeah.
So
So could you just
to get
explain
through this
how the local
process, and
authority
this is
are
key, because when we generally get our clients, they are
supporting
very
that
frustrated,
really creative use
disillusioned.
of budget,
Their
giving you that
trust has been broken
freedom
down because they've
to
said
use it
it's
in that
taken
way?
so long to get here, and this is why when we get to the
Well, what
eligible
it is, we get
continuing
our pot of money
care funding arrangements,
off
they've
the
probably
off the
been in the
council and
system
throw it in.
Exactly,
trying
make your
to get
outcomes, don't you?
Make our
stage, maybe for
outcomes.
up
So
to
we
12
take,
months, sometimes 18
say
months.
we
So when they
go
get
to
to
the
us, they
cinema,
just want things to
what we
happen,
do,
and I try and explain to them,
because we get
we
picked
can
up at the
make this
door
happen, but we
and
need to
get
work with
dropped off
everybody,
outside
because if
the
everybody
building.
doesn't have a clear
We don't have to pay
understanding,
for our
it will
support.
just not work. It's not a quick fix.
Support workers, so we
It's a
get
well thought out
we pay for the
process,
taxi out of that
and I'm going to explain how we
pot of
do
money. You
that
see,
to see
so
how
we're
you can
saving money,
to
and
make you
that we're trying to
understand.
be creative to get as much out of it
I
as
just
we
also
can.
want you to understand, and you may all
Yeah,
know
yeah.
this, there are different
You all share a
arrangements to
taxi
manage
and
the
then
care
go to
and
the place and
funding.
then taxi back.
We get an
And that
awful
saves
lot of
3 staff.
different terminology
Then
from
3
different
staff
local
at the same
authorities,
time, so we're
and
saving a bit
particularly
of
in
money there
contractual arrangements.
as well.
These have quite an impact on how that service is provided.
Brilliant.
in terms of who's
Thanks,
actually
guys.
holding
Okay,
the
I've got some
money,
questions coming in the
who's
chat for
actually
you now.
providing the care. So there really
So
are key
a few people saying
differences
thank
here.
you to you as well
So
for your wonderful
terminology
presentation.
is really
No problem.
important, and if we as a
Simon,
provider receive
Simon
a
Duffy's got a
contract which
question
we
for you.
think does not match a third-party arrangement,
Hi guys.
we do
One of the
go
things
back,
that always impresses
you
me
know,
when
and
I
ask
hear
to
you
meet and
is like
discuss so that
how
we're all
much
very clear, because if everybody
thinking
really
you've
understands
put
what we're all
into
trying to achieve at work, so if there's
trying
different
to help other
terminology,
people.
sometimes
I'd
it's a
say like
nightmare.
be a
And I
citizen.
think that's increasingly
I just
come
wondered
through
whether you
recently.
whether you
I've gone
think
back
about
to
whether
one
the
local
having
authority
your own
recently,
fund
and
has
actually their
helped you
glossary,
think about
and
that, how
actually
you
went,
make a
your
difference to
glossary
other
actually
people,
contradicts
or is that just a
itself
natural
going
thing? What do you
through,
think
and
is
they realise
what's
that, and
made
that's fine, and
you
we've been able to go
so
through, but
citizen
it does.
focused?
It does lead, and it's a slight
Well,
nuance where somebody
some
might
of our
call it
mates can,
direct payment third party, somebody
when we
else
not
might call it
go to
something
the
just
football
slightly
with and
different.
stuff,
And
they haven't
because
got a
we
voice
work
to
across
speak up.
30 plus
So me and
ICBs
Michael
and
try to help
goodness knows how many
them
councils,
Mm.
that
so
slight
they
different
can
nuance in
have
Yeah.
the
every
say,
single
see.
location is a
Well,
challenge,
we didn't
because
think about that at
particularly people
first. We
then move
just
between places as well. That
No,
can
just
also
don't know.
become
I think it's all the
difficult
training
for
and stuff,
clients
and the
if they're
work
going
with
to a
skills for
different place that
people
has a
and the
slightly
care act
different
training that
terminology
Jimmy's
to the
been
one where
doing.
they actually
There's
started at that
empowered you to
point.
do that, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So I
speak for the
generally
other
try and
people.
explain that we need to consider the employer responsibility.
Fantastic.
Who is going to
Welcome.
be the
Great
employer
work.
in this situation, and equally our CQC
Okay, another
regulation.
question for you
As
guys.
an individual
Do you
receiving
both
direct
think this
payment,
support
they're not
works better
CQC
for you
regulated.
than your
And
previous
whilst they should be a
support?
good employer
Yes.
and follow health and
Yes,
social
definitely
care,
100%.
when we sometimes receive these packages,
We have our
there are
say.
all sorts of issues in
Last
terms
time we
of
had
nobody has a contract,
we had
or
our
there
say,
may
but
not be a
it's
Mars chart,
when
or
you
there
get
may
your own
not be
sport
this, or
money,
there may
you
not be that.
you
So
get
we need
more
to address
say
that,
in
and
what you
we
want
have
to
these
do and what
conversations, and I
you-
meet with local
So
authorities
some
and
stuff doesn't
ICBs
work.
to discuss a package
So
of
you
care
get back
and where
round
the
the
issues
table
are and
and
how
you
we can
talk
work
about it,
together
and
to
then
resolve them.
you get into the
I
bits that
also, we
the good
seem to be
work,
seeing
and
a
you
lot
get
of
the
the
ones
word
that are bad,
managed
so you can
account in social
always
care,
work
and
around
people
it.
seem
You
to
see.
think
around
we
it.
offer an ISF as a
How
managed
supported Jimmy
account,
and Michael
and
when they
it's
lived in
not.
81
And the
in
reason it's
24
not
hour
is that in a
care
managed managed
and
account,
a
the
lot of that
provider
was
is handling the
shared hours.
financial side
So
of the
the
package
moving
care.
out on their
So
own,
this
having their own
involves,
individual
managing
fund
invoices, the
of my
payroll, the
support money
tax, or the
has worked
HMRC
loads better for them.
obligations.
Yeah.
In
Gives
an
them a better
ISF
life.
and a third party,
Because we
we're
are
doing
all
both.
interested on
We're
them.
managing the care
Yeah.
arrangements and we're managing the finances.
Awesome.
So there's quite a difference
Cool.
there for
Helen.
people to understand, particularly in contractual terms.
Can I just
Hi there,
Yes.
thanks very much. Really,
Yes, we
really
do.
great
So I think
presentation.
when I say
Really
we're
enjoyed
quite
listening to it.
flexible, we have currently
I'm
clients
just
that are
wondering,
direct
it
payment. We
seemed
have
like
clients that
a
are
lot
also,
of what you're
managed accounts,
talking
enhanced
about
managed
relies
accounts,
on the
as
fact
well
that
as
you're
third party,
close to each
and
other, that
increasingly
you're in the same
with local authorities
building, you
developing
know, for the group that you've been
almost a
talking
new
about.
type of account,
And the
which is
fact
the
that you
ISF,
also have
stroke site managed,
friends and
particularly
family
changes
who
in the
can
law that
help
happened recently about
you
people's
decide
mental
what's
capacity and
best
whether
for
they
you.
should be in charge of
How
their accounts or
important
not.
do you
So
think
we're
those
beginning
things
to
are?
see
Like,
quite a
say,
few
for
changes. So I think
example, if
recognising
you were just
what
living
we
on your
described
own
today
and, you
is
know,
how
you
it is
weren't,
now, but
didn't
we
have that
recognise
support
that it
network
may
around you,
change
how
within a
easy
year
do you
as well
think it
with the
would
changes that
be
may be happening
to
government-wise as well.
plan
And
and
equally,
manage
we can discuss
the money
different
that
funding
you've got?
arrangements and how they work, and
You know, if you
Well,
like,
so that we all
imagine
understand it and
lived in the middle of
create
nowhere.
documents that reflect the responsibility and roles of
what you
everybody, so it's
do,
all very
if you
clear.
can do it, you get your
So if we were
support
to look
worker,
at the
or you,
employment and our
then you can
CQC
sit down
regulation,
and go
it takes
through
it
the
really
budget
onto third
and
parties and
pay for
individual
your
service
activity,
funds.
pay for your staff members, and then
So
work from there
our
and see
understanding of an
what's left
individual
over
service
and
fund is self-directed
work from
support
there, you see. Well,
option,
it does
where a
work,
person with
so it
care
wouldn't,
needs
you
chooses
can
an
sit down and
organisation,
explain
a
it,
bit
it
like
won't work.
ourselves, to manage
I
their
think a
personal
lot of
budget.
Aaron would be empowering the
And this
staff and
enables a
training the
flexible,
staff in
personalised spending on
ISFs
activities,
and my support
equipment
money
and
and
support
the
to meet
care
their
act,
goals.
so they
And
can
this
speak
differs
up
from
for the
direct
people that they're
payments
supporting,
by involving a
to let them
third
know what they are
party for
entitled
management
to.
and organisation of the care as well as the
Thank
So it's
you.
employment.
about staff recruitment and staff
Direct
training
payments
Yeah,
are
yeah,
and
local
advocacy
council
for the
funds
people who
provided to
can't speak
individuals,
up for
again
themselves who haven't
assessed
got
as,
family.
as needing care,
yeah.
and allowing
Yeah,
them to
I
arrange and
understand
pay
that.
for their
A
own
lot
support
of people
services.
don't
But
understand.
as Claire said, we can
No,
offer a managed account
That's
where
why
we would
they want
support
support
them
money.
to do that, but we wouldn't actually provide the
Thank
care.
you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
A direct payment offers great
Cool.
flexibility,
Rachel,
choice
can
and
you come back in?
control, and is often the direct payment
Yes,
holder
I've
will
got a
hire their
question,
own
just
PAs, and they
following on
maybe
from
have
what Helen
agreements
has just asked, which
purchase
I think is
equipment.
very
And again, I just need you to
important
recognise
aspect.
here the importance of
That
us as a
Angie, if
third
I could
party
ask
provider taking
yourself,
on the
but also
employment,
everybody
or us
there,
as a third party provider taking on an
if
ISF,
you
we
weren't
are the
living in the
employer
same
and we have
flat and you weren't
responsibilities that we
necessarily
need
being
to
all
meet
supported
under our
by
regulations.
Dimensions, how open would you be
I
if,
strongly believe both
say,
of
for instance,
these
you had a
work,
friend
and
with
they're
another
really
provider
cost
that had an
effective because they
ISF,
actually offer true
but you still wanted to
personalisation,
share
because you
that
really
taxi, you
do get to know
still
the
wanted
person what
to
they want.
share that
And in
support
terms
to
of
go
money
to
for
an
value for
event.
money,
How open
I actually think they're more cost
are
effective than
Dimensions
a traditional
with
agency, and I'll explain why.
supporting
So what we would do as a
the
third
people
party
with
provider
ISFs to
is
pool budgets
we
with other
become an employer.
ISF
So
people? Have you
anything
got that
associated with
flexibility as
HR
much
and
as we have
involving
with
employing
direct
people we
payments?
manage, so the
I
right to
wouldn't
work
say not
checks,
at the
the
moment until we
DBS,
get the virtual
any
wallet in. I
visa
mean, I know
placements
we
or
do support
sponsorships,
people
we
who've got
manage all of
other
that
friends that we
situation.
don't, they're not supported
The
by
employees
Dimensions,
become our
and
employees,
that works.
so
I
we
mean,
follow
I
our
don't manage
statutory
that person,
requirements,
but I know it does
job
work.
contracts, job descriptions. We manage the
It's all about the
supervisions, their
brokerage and
appraisals,
accounts
we
and
manage the
stuff, and our
training.
finance department working with
In
theirs.
terms of their
Like if they're
finances,
paid one way on
we
their
would open
taxi
the
account
individual
and we
bank
could pay the
account
other way,
because we would
stuff
receive
like that
funding from a
would
local
work.
authority or the
Rachel.
ICB as
Absolutely,
per the
thank you.
agreed budget to pay
Welcome.
for everything that's agreed in the budget. We
Danny.
would then be responsible for the auditing, and the auditing varies from ICB and local authority,
I
and
just wanted
we
to
manage
come in
all of
and
that.
say, well, it's
We
really
also share
interesting to hear your
a budget. We
experience,
would provide
because
you with a thorough
I'm
budget breakdown
I'm
and a training matrix,
I'm
basically based on the
elsewhere in the
information we
northeast,
receive from
and
you,
they're
and that is also in the
completely
Karen support plan
not
to identify how
offering me
that
an
budget needs
ISF, and
to be spent.
Hartlepool was one
Equally,
of
that
the
budget needs
was
to
one of the
cover
areas I've been
everything that we
considering
need as an
moving
employer.
to,
Because remember, we
because
get
I've
an
got quite
individual
a couple
budget
of
for every
friends.
single
I've
client
got
of
quite a good
ours. We
friendship
have
group
over
down
100
there,
clients. We have
but
over 100 bank
it's
accounts,
quite good to have
and
a
each
case study
bank can be
like
individually
yourself
audited. So
to say this
it's
is
really
how
good
it
for
could work,
transparency
and
for
and at the
funders.
minute
One thing I was just going to say on that, and I think
yeah,
it's
and
important to highlight,
come
one
to
of the
think of
things
it,
we
I know you
sometimes find we
mentioned that
trip
you
up
had
with,
an MDT quite
because we are the
frequently
employer, but
with
because
a
each
nurse and
package is
stuff,
separate,
is
as a company,
because you've got health
just so that you're
funding
aware,
or
and this is something
or,
within social care that's often
and
one
what
of the contentious issues
and
is that
is it a common way
we
of
cannot
working for
take
you
out
to have the
insurance
MDTs?
for
Because
Well,
it was quite
redundancy
difficult for me to
as a
get that
company for
for
each of the individual
me.
clients.
But my
Because although
my
they're employed by us holistically as a company,
my
each set
my
of
locality
employees just
services in
work
my
for that
local
one
authority
package.
are
They
really
don't
bad
move
at
between
working
packages.
together.
often because there can be 50
Well,
miles
this
between
Danny would
to the
try
next
and
package. They wouldn't be able to
make it on a
physically do
monthly
that.
basis
So
just to
that
get
can
the good
sometimes
bits
lead
and
to
the bad bits, you
discussions
see, and we
with
try and
particularly
work
social
with
care
as a
when
team.
we're
And
trying to work out
because
how
when
do
you
we
work as a
cover
team,
if, for
you're
example,
only
the
as strong,
client
and
were
then
sadly to
you
pass
get out
away.
the
So we've
weakest
had
link,
quite
you see.
recently, we've had 5
Then you
that
can
have suddenly
get
died.
stronger. Each person gets stronger.
How
And
do we then
that's how we
process
try and do it.
redundancy? Within the health service, then obviously there is an element that comes through for redundancy that we are able to hold.
It
But
works
social
really
care
well,
is
Danny,
typically
yeah.
can be seen as a direct
Works really
payment, and
well.
within the finance teams,
It keeps
that
everyone up to
can be more
date.
of a contentious
Up to
issue
date.
at that point, and often very has to negotiate quite hard on that element going forward. But that just throws up some of the technical issues that sometimes
Jimmy's
come
got a good
because
nurse.
under a
good
direct
community
payment,
nurse,
and if
haven't you,
somebody
Jim?
is
Oh,
being
yeah,
the
really
person that
involved.
employs,
Yeah.
they can
Hartlepool's
receive a lump
nurse
sum,
and community
etc.,
team
or
are really, really good.
money
Danny,
that will help them
I've
support
worked
that
with them for
element
years and
of
they are really
work
good.
if needed. But we don't
Community
get that.
nursing team for the people that support.
Every package of care has their own individual client relationship manager, which is one point of contact. So they get to know the client, the employees, the named health professional, either from health or from social care. So it's a three-way working arrangement, which works really well. Yes, which I've touched on. We also would complete all care planning and risk assessment, particularly in health and complex packages, as well as social care, particularly around autism, learning disability,
Okay, got another question in the chat for you guys.
personal behaviour support plans. We receive
does
these
the
and we
local
get these
authority
from the
take
named health
back
professionals,
any
and we then use
money
them
that's left
to
over
write our
in your
care
support
plans
fund,
and
or
to
do you
risk
always get
assess.
to keep hold
And
of it and use it
we
however
then
you would
use
like
them
to
in our
use it?
training. So we would share them
Yes,
with
what we
training
do,
providers.
we have our
So that training
money that
is
we put in the
person
pot.
specific.
We pay for our activities,
And that
our,
training
like,
often
then
takes
we
place
pay
in
for
people's
like what
homes.
the staff and
Because the
our,
clients are
then
so
whatever's
complex,
left
some of
over, we
them
put back
can't
in the
leave
pot
their
for the
home
week.
and they can't be
The
left
week
alone.
after, so
So
we
we
always
arrange for training
create-
to take place in home.
week
Equally, if
ahead.
it can't, we will use a
We're
venue
always trying to
nearby,
be
but
creative to
it's
get
case
as
by
much
case.
out of it
But
as
generally, the
possible,
training is completed at
so we
home
can do more
with their
things with it, you
equipment.
see.
What we
Because I
introduced
like to
during
go to the
COVID
football.
was
Michael doesn't
tablets,
really like
so we have
go to the
real-time
match, but
information. So
I
all of
go
our
to football and I
documentation is
meet my mates at
digitalised
the
in line
match,
with
and
NHS's,
then
10-year plan for
so that's a
digitalisation,
good thing and
which
stuff.
actually works really well
Yeah.
on reviews
So that's
because we can
brilliant.
give you information for whatever
Awesome.
limited period you want or
Karen.
extended period you want. You can give you reports from this
you.
morning.
And Jimmy,
It
Michael,
it's
thank
also
you so
useful
much
when clients go
for that.
for
You really are
professional
inspiring. You
visits to
probably
see
don't
an
realise
epilepsy
quite how
nurse,
much
and they
you are, but
ask,
you really are.
what's the last 3
My
weeks
support
epilepsy
money,
seizures
I
been like?
love
Recorded,
that.
we can share
Individual
it. So
service funds,
it's been really, really
absolutely. Social
useful,
work speak,
real-time
not
information.
easily understood what
Insurance,
that means. You've just translated
employees and
that
employer
into
fall under our
something
insurance, so
that's
we
so
cover the
easy for
insurance for
everybody
everybody.
to
We
understand,
obviously
which
then
is
take on the
fabulous.
role of,
I
sorry,
loved a couple of
we then
things
have
that
our
you really
CQC
said then.
regulations
You
and
said, we
responsibilities.
don't ask permission, we tell our social worker what we've
Whilst
done
these
in the last year
have
when
to
we
be
do
there, and
a
I get they have to
review.
be there, we try and
And
think
I'm
differently as to how
interested in a
we
couple of
achieve these
things.
things that need to be
Have you ever
achieved.
asked to do
So
anything
a
that you've
lot
been
of
told,
clients,
no, you
when
really
we have
can't
family
spend the money
members
on?
question and
And
query,
secondly, how
why
do
do
you
I
work
have to do
out with your
training when
social
I was
worker
shown in the
what
hospital and
the right
discharged
amount
how
of
to
money
manage
is, or are you just
my
told?
peg?
When you get
These
what
conversations
happens, you
take
get
careful,
recessed and then they
careful,
go from the hours
careful
done, and that's how much
stepping around
they're
because families, I
profit
get,
put the money there
understand, and they are
decide.
experts by
So we get to
experience.
put it to the
The
pot.
dynamic changes
And
when
then
we become an
just say,
employer
like,
and they become an
just
employee.
say, for
And for our
instance, like
insurance and for our
me and Michael
CQC
went to
regulation, they need a
to
DBS,
the
they need to be
pool,
trained, they need
so
to take care notes. So those
we went to get a pool at
conversations,
the
once
pool
they're
hall.
understood
And
and
the
why,
social worker said, "Oh, you
generally
have to go to the
are
pool hall."
okay. And we
But if
wouldn't
we didn't
progress
like
a
it,
package of care
then we
either without,
wouldn't have to say to the
in
social
exceptional
worker the next
circumstances
week, "Oh, we don't
from
like
the
that no more. We're going to
ICB
do some."
that says
We
family
just
members living in the
we
same
just
home can be employed.
change it, you
So
see, because it's
we work
flexibility.
with you around that because we
So
often
we
have
just
cases where
do
a client has had a
try and
direct
get the bad
payment,
things out and get the good things out.
they've
But
been the
the
employer and the
social worker hasn't
employee,
said
and they've been
anything
paying themselves £50
negative
an
about
hour,
us.
and suddenly the ICB or
So
local authority come in and say that
I'm
the
sure
package
if
is going
it
to be
wasn't
transferred
working,
to
she would
solo,
say something,
and
but she
these
hasn't
are
said
our
no.
costs, and these are our rates of pay,
Please,
and there are conversations we need to have to manage that.
Because
And
our
generally,
support money
we
is,
do.
it's not about
We
everybody
have a
else,
lot
it's
of
about
interest
us,
and a
you
lot of
see.
inquiries around
We
learning
make the
disability and autism
decisions and then
packages.
go on
Depending on
from
the levels
there.
of distress, depends on on the amount of support, we have a specialised PBS team.
Welcome.
They are really, they are also regulated, but they have really their own set of regulators, particularly around restraint and restrictions.
So
So we
just
have
get left to
PBS
do your own thing
practitioners
with it completely.
who work on
and
our
trust you to make
packages
decisions.
to
As long as
manage behaviours of
if we
distress,
speak about them
and
without saying, like,
associated with all of that is the paperwork that comes with it. Again,
Carl and
really valuable for real-time information
Ellen and
for people to look at to see what's triggering these behaviours, why these behaviours changing.
In your review,
9 times out of 10, it's changed routine.
in your
And probably our
reviews, they come out
biggest
with outcomes for the
factor
one
is
work on
change
for
of
the
staff.
following year.
And this is
So
really
the
key
social
in these
workers
packages,
involved
in
in all
that
that.
the same staff and the same
On the review.
routine
Yours is coming
keep
up. on the
these
review.
clients
Coming up.
happy
as long as we
to live their
don't
lives.
like go too overboard, Chris, and
Yeah, so
start
it's a
doing
real
taking
consideration in these
making stuff,
packages.
then it's fine. But you know what I mean?
The
If-
majority
in
of our complex learning
bound-
disability autism
boundaries,
packages
you
have
know what
come
I
to
mean?
us after
Yeah.
years.
No, that's really good. And just
trauma,
one more question from me. Do they put
traumatic
extra money
units,
in your
from acute
budget every
units,
year, or do you have to ask them
and
if
they've
you need
lived with
extra
families,
funds?
and families
Like, what
have supported
happens
them,
when you get that
and they
annual
seem to be
review?
thriving, which is really great to
Well,
see.
you get so much.
So that's the
you
role
have
of a
to-
third party
if you get
provider,
change of
which would be
circumstances,
exactly
then they
the
put
same
more
as what
money
we
in it,
do on
Chris,
an
but
ISF.
if
We
you
become the
haven't got change of
employer, we have our
circumstances,
HR
it's the same amount
responsibility,
each
employer
time.
responsibility, the finances, client relations
So
manager,
we try and get as
three-way way
much
of
out of it as
working,
possible.
care planning, risk
I know in
assessment,
the past we've
exact
saved
same
local
process we
authorities
do on
money
an
because we pay.
ISF.
I
The
supported
funding
a
will
lot
just
of
be from a
young
personal
gentlemen that
budget
attended a
for
college
social
in
care.
Hartlepool, and they used to pay.
So that takes
company
me
to
on to the
pay
different levels of
the
support
college,
that
and we didn't charge them, so we
work
saved
with.
them a
So in
fortune
a
throughout the year
third
because we
party
paid the college fees for them through our
personal
finance
health
department.
budget, Solar manage the finances, receive
So
the
we've
finances.
saved
We are the
Hartlepool loads of
employer.
money doing
We
that
are
for them.
responsible for auditing, which takes a major strain on families,
Good message that.
and we're CQC regulated.
Rachel?
We also have managed accounts.
Plus, Chris,
where
you have
they
to
don't
have
receive
you
the
have to have a
finance,
good team
but
around
the
you,
managed
see, like
account,
your
we
nurse
generally
and
have
your
self-employed
management
PAs who we pay the invoices
whoever you
to,
work with,
or
because
we are
then you
paying a
know
dom care agency that the family have
what their
chosen they want to work
capabilities
with.
are.
As we
You have
receive
got
the
a very
funds,
good
we
team
will be
around you there,
audited,
haven't you?
and
Like
these
you said,
are
the
doing
nurse
as
can-
regulated by
very lucky there.
CQC.
Yeah.
We have quite a
Brilliant,
few
Chris,
accounts.
Diamonds in the
Yeah.
budget.
We then have a direct payment. You've got your finance goes to your budget
Yeah, Rachel's
holder.
very-
They
Yeah, shall I go?
generally become the employer.
Yeah, so
They are
again, picking up
generally
on what
audited, and they're not
Karen
CQC
asked then,
regulated.
and
And then, as
I
you'll see, an
see
individual
so
service
many
fund through
people that
social
are
care, you
given
have
a
your finance,
budget
we
that
would
their
receive the
life has
finance,
to fit
the
into
funding,
and
we become the
around,
employer, we're responsible for audits,
and
and we're
sometimes that
CQC
can't,
regulated.
may
So
not
there
be
are real
enough. It might be the
similarities. That's for
original
health and that's for
budget, or
social
it could
care.
be
But
at
as Solar,
review when you need
we work
maybe a
across
little
all of
bit
them. And like I
more
said,
in
we've
the
got a new
future as
development
people
in
get
Nottingham with
either get
with another
older,
way of working, a
or
managed account and a direct payment.
things get a little bit more
We are
difficult
holding
and
the
you need
funds,
some more
and
money.
the
And
client
I was wondering,
is
Angie, if
directing the care that they want.
you know, using
Because they have
things
capacity
like
to be able
the
to do that,
grids
but they
to
just do
be
not have the
able to show the
capacity or the
social worker we're
ability to
needing
manage all the
more
financial
support
side of
around
it.
these
So we've looked at a new way of
particular
working with
things,
Nottingham
and
that
actually the
came live
budget needs to
yesterday.
go up for the
And also
following
being the
year
employer.
because of these things.
Yes.
What sort of
Because
ways
they
do
have
you use the grids?
capacity to direct how
Hartlepool
they
actually
their
use
funding,
the
but they
24/7
don't
grid.
actually
They
have the
use it within
capacity
the
to
local
be able to
authority
manage
and
the
assessing people
employer's
and things.
elements. So
Well,
whilst
a
they're
lot of the
technically
lads I
therefore a
support
direct
just come out of
payment,
college.
there is a need to
So
have something that fits
obviously we're working
between
together with
some
Hartlepool
of
to
the
show
others. So
what they wanted to
again,
do
we are
coming out of
beginning to
college, what
adapt
activities they
and
wanted to do
change,
on the
going
27
through, but
the
recognising
24-hour
sometimes
grid. So
often
it
it's not
works
the
really well, and
commissioners or
they
the
use it
people
anywhere,
that you work
Rachel.
with here or you're online. Sometimes
I mean, when you first came, Jim, we didn't get the hours that we really wanted, but we made that budget work for Jimmy to bring him out of hospital using just we actually paid Dimensions for to just check and just roaming to put in Jimmy's flat with Jimmy's permission to see what support and what he was doing in his flat, what support he were going to need, wasn't we, Jim?
Just some
And
of the
then we did
limits
the
of flexibility in health
walkie-talkies, we
funded
did
third party
create the
arrangements,
come
which
down
we're
with me,
finding
so it would
now.
work for all of them, because
I've
you
been
and I
working in
hardly haven't got
business
any
health
hours,
budgets
have
for
we?
11 years.
So it
And in
works
the early
really
days,
well.
you were just given a budget, a sum of money, and you were told to go
I love
to
the
meet your
come dine
needs,
with
and
me.
that money was spent
Absolutely love
to
that
meet
idea.
people's needs, but then it came
Do
into
that
public
every
eye,
week.
people were objecting to things. So there was
Monday to Friday.
there was a much tighter
Monday to
control of
Friday.
these. There seem to be budget
Takeaway on a
ceilings now.
Saturday.
There's sometimes a
Takeaway
misunderstanding of budget
Takeaway Saturday,
expected to be
guys.
for traditional care packages.
Yes.
Complex packages
Laura,
are not considered in a personalised way, in that they just say, well, they just need to have this training or that training, and we're like,
guys,
it's not a generic
really,
training.
really
it needs
interesting
to really be
hearing about how you're
specific
making
because
your
of how they
ISF
move
work for you. you. Thank you for
another
sharing it
diagnosis
with
they
us.
have. So
I was
there are a
wondering
lot
whether
of
you'd be
complex
able to
packages of
tell
delegated
me a
health
bit more
tasks,
about how you've
and
used
learning disability and autism
technology-enabled
packages, and these
care
require
to
so much more input
increase
than
your
just a normal traditional dom care
independence
agency
and
package.
use less
Yeah,
direct
yeah.
support, or use
It's
direct
vast
support
amount of work we
differently,
put into these
that
packages.
in a way that works better
health
for
funded
you, either
health
generally
funded packages
and
are
if you've got
becoming
other
more
examples
and
or
more
specifically
solely
for
focused on
the
almost health
situation that
and the
we're talking
clinical
about right
side,
now.
and
These guys.
potentially sometimes
We
sight is
tried
being
the
lost
walkie-talkie
of
festival.
the well-being of the
I
person,
wasn't
and
answering,
actually what can make that need be met in a different
So
way.
thought if that was
Hydrotherapy
knocked on the head, so we had to
is
find something else.
the biggest bane.
So we've
So
There's no
we've
funding
got
for
let's say
hydrotherapy, yet hydrotherapy
fell
for
in back
some of our
Wallen, she
clients is
said,
so effective.
and
And until we get an
alarming,
OT
if I
referral
don't
and
get
an
up,
OT report,
plays Irish
sometimes
music, so I
clients
have
get
to get up and
independent
turn it
ones,
off
the evidence
get out of bed.
to
That's
not to
So
prove, but
that
to
went
demonstrate
better.
that,
Then
you know, in order to sit comfortably in a chair, hydrotherapy twice a
that
week
went into
really
that
helps those
shares
muscles
free
and the
flat,
spasms
so
relax,
then we can
and so
share
that
that,
need
and
is
then we can
met.
share the
And
currency.
it's just thinking
So
differently and putting in a
we
budget
do
when
as much
actually you
sharing
would
as we
see
can,
the
and it
cost.
saves hours.
It's not
Then we
much
put them back in
more,
the pot.
Electric
Yeah.
less
work
than
really well
traditional
for
care packages,
medication
yet they're
prompts
getting
and
so
stuff
much
as
more.
well for setting alarms throughout the
There
day.
can be limited flexibility.
We have used Alexas a
Flexibility
lot.
on
You don't get 24
health
hours
packages
apart.
now.
Do you?
Once the
Nearly.
budget's created and
Rough
approved,
area of
and it's a
Article, so
specific support
we put a
plan,
ring doorbell and
if
things
that
up
is
and
not
stuff
reviewed
like
as
that
it
for
should be annually
security.
and needs
Yeah.
change,
You
we
for
can be
that.
stuck in this rut whereby.
Yeah.
And I get there
Before-
are
when we're going out
huge
the
cuts
property
in
as well.
NHS currently, particularly
Sorry,
now.
did you say that one more
saying
time?
cuts, you know, starting
going
from
out the
1st of
property?
April. So
Yeah.
is your
Ring
workforce going to
doorbell
shrink?
and
People
Alexas.
understand PHBs, are they going to disappear?
Oh,
So
brilliant. That's
that
really
is a
helpful. I
concern,
can
that is a
imagine that's
worry.
been very good, actually, the ring
And
doorbell
that
for
limits the
security.
flexibility
Yeah.
because
And
it
it
doesn't
gives you
offer
more
people
confidence in your
those
family
kind of
as well that
choices.
you're
There is never
knowing who you're letting
any
in.
funding at
Yeah.
the moment
Thank you.
for activities or specialised equipment. I do know there are personal budgets for wheelchairs, but not many ICBs offer them. And then generally there is, it's not a domain on a decision support tool, but it does specify other needs in relation to meeting somebody's healthcare outcomes, and that's never ever filled in on a DS.
Yeah, just checking's really good as well.
And if that was to be looked at and the money used slightly differently, it would meet those people's needs.
Where he was a working night.
Sometimes funding can be slow and delayed,
particularly
in our larger packages where it needs to go to several panels to be approved.
During the night and what staff was doing,
also, if a need changes or if a review isn't done on time and the need changes, it takes a long time for the funding to come through.
Sorry.
So there are limits on its flexibility.
Sorry. Did that come from
We have very good relationships with ICBs. We work closely with them.
Sometimes
and try to address these as quickly as they can and work through them. I regularly meet with ICBs on updates with packages to see if there are any concerns, and we work together.
And how
to
do you
resolve
feel?
them. So it does work well.
And was that for
flexibility on individual service funds?
This is what
so in an
make sure we're
ISF,
getting this
you
support
can
right.
bank some of your hours.
How did you feel about that, Jimmy?
If one week some family members provide some informal care, you're banking those hours, and you may use them next week because potentially you're going to play poker, or you're going to go to the library, and you need some support to get there. So it's those sort of things where ISFs are used differently to meet somebody's needs. There really seems to be quite a creative use of funds. There are a lot of community activities.
And your
they can hire peers if they want, and we support them with this. They can purchase assistive technology, can arrange short breaks. The budget can be used flexibly,
obviously,
but the budget's
someone who hasn't got
used
capacity
flexibly in collaboration with the funder, the provider, which would be us. So we know what's been agreed in the care and support plan, and we know how those funds can be used flexibly. On orders, we're then able to identify and evidence how those funds have been met.
Sleepover and assess what Jimmy needed and what times
tailored support planning. This is really key.
When he first moved back.
The named health
staff
profession really knows the client. They really know what's important to their clients and what they would like to achieve. I can't tell you how important it is for us and for the clients when there's a named health professional in an ISF and a PHB, because if there are any issues, we can go to that person and we get things resolved very, very
Morning,
quickly.
everyone. Thank you so much for this.
Flexible
This has just
contracting.
been incredible. So I work for BCP Council, which is at the other end of the country from you. So we're in Bournemouth.
So people are
Christchurch
achieving
and
their
Poole.
outcomes by using
First
that pot of
question for
money
you is
to think creatively,
which
to think
football
outside of the
team
box.
do you support?
And I suppose an advantage in this, which may well be that in our really complex health packages, is you can use voluntary services.
Most
and
of my family lived
voluntary services are free, so
and
you're
around
freeing up
Sunderland
some
for
other
many
money
years.
to
But anyway,
use
we
it
don't need to go
elsewhere.
into that then.
But that all takes careful conversation and consideration, and if that's all in
we
care
haven't
and support
embarked
plan,
on our
we work
ISF
to
journey
that,
yet. We're just
and
putting
make
together
it
a
work.
pilot, and it's all coming together.
So that brings me
I
on
was
to
just
how we
wondering
price
how
and
you
cost
guys would
for
feel
third-party PHBs
whether
and social care ISFs.
you could do like a
So
little
we provide
video
an
or something,
individual
or maybe you
budget
have
for
that
every
already,
single client
because I
that we
think
have.
to
We do
hear
not have a set
this
hourly
people
rate
in
of
and around
pay.
BCP, our
The budget
social workers and
depends
everything
on
else, and
what
people
the
that are going to
diagnosis
be
is
hopefully
generally and
receiving
what
an
training.
ISF
Those are
going
probably the
forward.
biggest
You know, how would you
influences
feel
on the
about
budget.
coming to talk to them, or maybe
Our budgets
putting
are very
together a video that we
transparent.
could
We
share,
identify all of
anything like
our
that, or you may
employer
have
and our
something
package
already?
management
Yes,
costs
we have. We've
within a
done that
budget,
on video,
and
but
the budget will be
Chris,
broken
if you
down
want to
into an
get
hourly
the
cost. You get a
details,
weekly
we can do
cost,
it
a
over the
4-weekly
teams
cost,
coming in
a
for
monthly
the
cost,
council
and
and
an
stuff, for
annual
the
cost.
social workers and that, couldn't
So
we?
you can see in
Yeah, that's right.
comparison
So
our
Michael and
overall
Jimmy,
cost of care
they
compared
do
to the other
informal work
domiciliary
for
care
us through self-directed
agencies.
futures as our
In terms of
trainers.
what we do,
So they would
for
come
me, I
along
think we're really
and do
cost effective, and
sessions
I'm costing budgets
through our contract
all
with
the
BCP.
time.
We could include
Brilliant.
multiple sessions with them to get
What we
everybody to
demonstrate
hear
on
the
our budget
story,
are
because
our
obviously it's
Yeah.
amazing.
employer
So
responsibilities.
It just
So
makes
we have
it
our wages,
all
and
more,
then
well,
we
it
have
is
all the
real,
on costs.
obviously,
So
but it
our
just makes
employer
it,
and
for
I
people that
currently is
haven't
at
actually
50%.
looked
I
at all of
understand not
that
everybody
yet,
hits
you know,
that
it just makes it so
threshold,
much more
and we
real.
wouldn't know that
So
for
that'd be
probably the first 3
fabulous. Thank you
months
very much.
when we would do
Do
our
I come
first
through to
audit,
you then,
or
Chris,
if we're
for
requesting an
this?
audit
yeah,
to
absolutely.
evidence the funding where it's
That's all
gone.
factored into
Holiday
the new
accrual,
contract
we
that we're working
allocate
out with you at the moment. So
12.07%.
yeah,
We work on
Thank
a
you.
holiday
Thanks
accrual
again,
system.
guys.
Statutory
problem.
pensions
No
at
bother,
3%
problem.
and statutory
Thank you.
pay at
Simon.
2%, which includes maternity pay.
Yeah, I suppose this
Our
isn't a
budget will also
question, although
demonstrate the
you
cost
guys
of
might want to
mandatory and
comment on
specific
it.
training
It
costs.
was just when
We
we
also include
invented
the
this stuff
time it takes
30
for
years
employees
ago,
to
actually,
complete the
almost
training. We
exactly
do not expect them to do
in
this
Glasgow,
work, and the client
one of
relation
the big
manager
things
supports him in the background to complete all of
that
this.
I
This training is
noticed
completed
was
annually.
that the whole process of
If
being
there is an
clear what your money
existing
is and being
situation
clear that
whereby
it was
we
really
are
the person's
transferring
money
employment from
really
from
encourages
one employer
staff
to
to be
another to another,
responsible.
generally for
And
us
you've
it's a
talked
direct
about that a
payment
little bit in the
holder
way
who no
you're
longer
doing it,
wants
but
to
I
do
think
that
some
or
of the
doesn't have the
questions are
capacity to
almost
do
like
that
coming
anymore,
from that
and they transfer
perspective
to us.
where
We
people
consider
have
the
stopped
redundancy
trusting
because if you
providers.
think about it, they've been
And
with
I suppose I just
potentially
wanted to make this
that
point that
employer
this is really a
with their
really
own individual
powerful
insurance,
vehicle
and there
for
would
improving
there would be
trust
support for
in every
redundancy if they were to
direction.
transfer across to
Because,
us. If
you
they
know, if you're a
transferred
member of
across to
staff and if
us,
you're any
and
good, or
sadly
if you're
they
a
passed
service
away the
provider,
next
and if you're any
day,
good, you
and they
want to
have
do the
more than 2
best
years
by
of service, they
people,
are
and
entitled
you
to
want to make
redundancy,
sure that the
and we would need
budget
that funding. So
works
those
for people.
conversations are had very
And I
early
think
on. So
sometimes
we're all very
commissioners
aware of the
either
potential
don't
cost of
believe
this
that
package of
or
care, and we have those
it's not crossed their
discussions.
minds that
We
that's a
provide
natural
consumables and we put a
human
cost within the
thing.
budget.
And
There are
we
also
take it
wellbeing costs to
away
meet
when we create
identified needs.
systems that
This is
don't trust
probably more
people, then
relevant
people
in
fight back
individual service
in a
funds.
way,
Although saying that,
like
I
their
had in a
behaviour
health package
changes.
to support
So
somebody
I
to
just,
attend
so it's
social
really a
events.
point I'm
They've
making.
paid
You
for
might
an
want to
Oyster
comment or you
card,
might not, but I
a
just think
certain
it's
amount a week for their
having
PA
it
to
be
support on
clear
the
that it's your
underground, the
money
train, the
is
tram
one
to
of the
get
most
to
powerful
events.
things you can do to
So
just get everybody on
again,
the same
we have
page
these
and everybody
discussions. I ask for
working in a
meetings with the
productive
local
way,
authority or the
disguising the
social worker
money,
or the
treating
PHP
people
lead,
like
you know, to
children,
make sure
treating
everything that's
disabled
currently
people
happening in
like
their
children,
package
and
is
treating
carried
staff
across
like
to us.
children is a way
And
of
then we
killing
have
trust
set
and
up
of
an ongoing
reducing
charges, and I'm
creativity
more than happy to
and
share our
reducing a
price guide
sense
with
of
anybody
responsibility.
hereafter.
I think this is what
So moving
commissioners really
on,
need to be aware of. Sorry.
Really, the transparency
I'm
in
standing
holding
on
the
a
funds, a lot of
soapbox,
local
I'll get
authorities and
Oh,
ICBs
you're right
ask
there,
about
Simon,
this around
because
audits and
I've
who's
got
holding the money.
Michael works
So
for the
Solar
council, you
creates
see.
a unique
He gets
budget,
his money
a
from the
unique,
council, so
our
when
budget's
Michael
unique
needs
for each
to
client. No
buy
budget
something,
is exactly the
he has
same,
to ask the
and
social
it's
worker,
based on
and
the
then
care
he
and
has to
support
go to
plan.
the
It's based on
social worker,
conversations
has
with
to
you
go
and
to the
conversations with the
disappointed
family.
team.
We then open
So
an
by the time
individual
he
bank
gets it,
account.
it's
So I think at
4
Solar we
weeks,
have
6
over
weeks down the
100
line
individual bank
sometimes.
accounts, and
You
these
know,
are
so
full
but I'm luckily I've got my own bank account,
transparency
so
and auditing
I don't need
purposes and
to.
how the funds are spent.
I can just
The
ask my
money
manager and
spent,
then
so we would
go and
provide you a
do it, you
balance sheet
see.
on audit,
So it's
should
a lot
match the
easier for
approved and
me, I
agreed
think.
budget. Any discrepancies are easily
But I don't know how
identified.
Michael
The
feels
biggest
about it.
stuff
How do
that
you feel
ever
about
builds up
Michael?
in a budget is when we can't recruit,
Half
and
an
you
hour.
would know about that well in advance of why we haven't been able to recruit. We provide audits as and when requested. Every ICB authority is slightly different.
Yes, thanks,
and
Chris.
We provide you with a bank
Absolutely
statement,
fantastic. And really, it's just to get back on Simon's soapbox, which is by creating that circle support, I mean, we call them care hubs, you get some creativity in there, which is just remarkable. And actually, as Simon says, it's a pretty trustworthy space. In fact, it's a very trustworthy space, and we've done a lot of them for a long time. And you get some remarkable, as they've demonstrated, remarkable results, which is really, really powerful, and definitely achieving outcomes. I think that's the difference here, is that you're looking at funding achievement of outcomes rather than the time and task models that we all know,
which allows choice and control. You really are accountable for every pound. You can see that every penny is spent. Any unspent funds are returned. What works well in this is professionals who understand this model because they provide and understand the flexibility that can be used around these. Different types of contracting for these packages. ICBs and local authorities have a clear understanding how to work, and I'm more than happy to explain our model and how it works. And once we get to know each other, we tend to work well together. It's really important
whether people will get on
the
and
professionals to know their rights, what really matters to them, and how those needs can be met and what services are available. And all of this is really relevant to be held in their care and support plan. We will ask for a care and support plan when we receive a referral to be able to cost it up and ask more questions.
The funding method and the characteristics.
I know this is inevitable. People leave jobs, but when sometimes
really
when commissioners leave their roles and new commissioners come on,
I'm just happy to see that there is definitely some
common thing we see is they see an ISF as a direct payment, or they see a third-party PHP as a direct payment.
So yeah,
and it's not a direct payment.
Well,
and it takes us a long time to unpick that. We try and manage people's expectations. Like I said earlier, by the time they get to us, they're incredibly frustrated. Everything's taken so long, and I say to them, from when a budget's approved by the panel, it generally takes us 8 weeks to set up. Once we've done all that HR and training and everything else, and then they work, and then they 3 months. You know, they're embedding. By 3 months, they're generally settled, and then the annual review comes up, and they work very well. I think another thing that works well is people understanding the legalities of employing people, employment, which is changing yearly. There are new HR regulations and legislation coming in all the time. It's keeping on top of that and making sure we understand that.
Laura.
Hi,
employing family members, employing family members, making family members understand what their responsibility is
in terms of you
compared to generally when they have a direct payment and they've been the employer. That works really well once they understand what we're trying to achieve with them.
More staffing?
For us as well, it's accountability for public funds.
Model.
We can easily identify this in audits. We can return surplus funding. If we've overcosted the package, we generally know why.
Training the staff in the induction.
And for me, my last thing in 10 years of working with third parties is it's a cost-effective service for the client to meet their needs, given them
training at the minute now with our L&D department. We're doing a full new training
taking me on to the last slide, which is are there any questions? Sorry,
okay, so you say more it's just about doing things differently rather than it being more time consuming, for example.
And I'm going to say I'm going to
and would you say
building
on the point I think
screen, so
Anne may have made earlier that staff and Simon that staff actually find it more fulfilling and it's an enriched
quite a lot to take in
working experience, or is it just it's as good as the old alternative?
So yeah,
model.
Any questions? I hope it all makes sense. I hope it's understanding of what
with ideas. They're thinking about this ideas out the box, assistive tech and stuff.
Because sometimes the staff have ideas that we don't have.
Yeah, I'm Rachel Mason. I'm a family carer with 2 adult sons with autism and learning disabilities. I've been running a direct payment for about 17 plus years now, taking it as an alternative to a very expensive residential care package and using the budget more flexibly within a direct payment with a living care and so on and so forth. Got a lot more outcomes
if I can,
out of it.
and Michael.
Now, I loved your presentation, by the way. I understood absolutely everything of it because it's something that I'm very passionate about.
There are
obviously running a direct payment 17 years. I am I want to retire from running a direct payment at some point in Somerset. And would like to be able to step back, but trying to find either an ISF or whether one of my boys with quite complex autism would fall under the personal health budget is here nor there.
Do you think having an individual service fund and being able to design your daytime activities is a good idea?
And that is the accountability and transparency to me and the boys about how the money's being spent. So in that very last slide, you talked about choice and control for the person. You were very eloquent and really clear about how you have got the different bank accounts, how you fill in the finance boxes, the auditing, send money back, profit and loss, etc. to the funder. But one thing I'm very passionate about with direct payments with individual service funds with personal health is when they are held by me and my accountability and transparency to the boys to let them know
when we've just brought
where their
Laura
money's being
down to
spent
college,
and
it's cheaper
them in their limited capacity able to say, actually, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do that over there.
With the budget, it's cheaper.
Move the money about, buy a piece of technology,
I mean, we found
rather
that
than having a PA come in and
going to
do those
a few of
prompts,
the day
have some
services here in
tech coming in,
Somerset
which is
was just
suited
under
Sean
£1
a
million.
lot better. You
That's a lot.
mentioned, you touched on there about the finance
And then obviously they
boxes
have to pay
with
for
a
the day
personal health
centre and stuff
budget
as
is
well,
a
don't
little
they, for
bit
them
more
to go, so
difficult
it
to
works out
purchase
cheaper
tech
for
or
them.
purchase
When it's
those
all looked into.
other things, whereas a direct payment, forgive me, it was much easier to ask forgiveness than it was permission. And as long as I could show that, yes, the money went down because I wasn't paying the PA anymore, that seemed to then, oh, okay, yes, you can have that after a little bit of a wriggle and a
anybody
fight.
has any other burning issues,
So how does
let
it go
Mark
with
and Jimmy get on with the rest
yourself?
of their day.
Do
You doing anything fun this
you
afternoon,
have
guys?
to, as you say, stick to the care plan? Do you push the boat out a little bit and kind of
Right,
ask
like
for
you.
permission
Don't think you like
afterwards, or forgiveness, should I say, or how do you manage that?
The children that'll be going to football.
You're playing, are you?
We would generally work with care and support plans. So within their care and support plan,
that's what we do on the Tuesday.
and this
We
is
pay
when
for
we
the
ask.
gym.
So I would have a conversation with you to really understand what it is you're trying to achieve. So if there is some surplus funding, how can that be spent on potentially assisted technology? Let's just say, for example, within the support plan, the social worker who's working with the package would need to understand that we all need to work together, so that as long as those funds are not overspent, those funds can be used differently. And I would want that captured in a care and support plan. In health, it's slightly different because actually that person needs that complex health task to be met. So generally they were on surplus funds, but in a social care package, to meet those health and wellbeing needs in a slightly different way, there needs to be understanding of how those funds can be spent. And the other thing is in terms of auditing, so if you on our auditing system, we allow the client to have access to, we have an online system called ClearBooks, and they can actually see the money coming in, the money coming out. They can't withdraw and add anything to that, but they can see how the money is being spent. So you would be part of that auditing process.
Nice to meet
I'm
you,
not going to
Danny.
say it's easy, I'm not going to lie.
Take care now.
And the slight
Thanks
issue
so much,
is
everyone, for
when
coming.
social workers or health professionals
everyone.
meet clients and new persons and show them the dynamics of the package, which is why we always ask for a really clear and updated care and support plan with annual reviews. We insist on those. Does that answer your question a bit more?
Absolutely, absolutely. And certainly one thing that I've learned over the years is the quality of the care plan. If the care plan is written in time and task and it ties my hands, I can't do anything flexibly. But if it's written in outcomes and I'm given the choice how that outcome is achieved, is so much, much better quality care plan.
Exactly that. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, that's for sure. Hi, Ian.
Hi, good afternoon now, isn't it, just? Oh, thanks for that, Debbie. That was excellent.
Thank you.
So I had a couple of questions, more around the administration than anything, and it speaks to the point Rachel just made. So we sort of manage 20 or 30 third-party budgets. They're moving mostly into continuing healthcare now. The average value is 270k a year or so. So what we found is a differentiation with commissioners between traditional smaller packages, which were very much outcome based, and larger, more complex, higher value packages, which become much more clinically sort of based, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the contracts that we get, ours are more complex. I mean, we don't operate very much with the smaller ones, but the more complex ones, the contracts that are written, whether they're ISFs or third party, there's almost a requirement to work to the agreed care and support plan. Is that something you find? And there's very little flexibility to get paid around anything really that's outcome related on those higher value plans. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, by the way, or a good thing. I'm just saying that's what we find.
And sometimes I think we have the same. We have the exactly the same. Was when I first started working with PHBs in the early days, you could really use that to meet all sorts. You could buy equipment. You could buy adaptions. You could do all of that. I think
they're saying that needs to be in the care and support plan now, aren't they? That's what they're saying. Is these? I mean, sorry, Debbie. Yeah, carry on.
I think public funds are tight. I think you have people, and people who potentially are working in finance who are not face to face with the actual client and understanding what it is trying to meet their needs. And that's probably the biggest hurdle we have is, and this is no disrespect to finance people, they do their job. I couldn't do finance. It's understanding what that person needs and use that money to make it work. So if you don't, so generally on a new referral, when I meet them for the first time, I ask the family, what else meets this need? How else is this need met? I would then bring it up with the ICB or the local authority to say, actually, can you consider this? And they go, well, it doesn't fall within our price range, but actually, if I put it in my budget, my hourly cost is probably 4 or 5 pence compared to your hourly cost, where actually you've got a benefit of that extra little bit of funding to meet that need. For me, it's communication. It's if you don't ask, you don't get. And it is, if it's not in the support plan now on audit, they'll say we can't pay for that.
Yeah, no. Could I ask a quick follow up, Chris? Would you mind?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
So we're just as I say, our budgets are quite high in terms of complexity. We've returned. I'm interested in this area actually with you. We've returned this year in year about £50,000 of unspent activity-based budget. There is generally contingency in there for outcome, generally about 10%, I would say. So we've returned 50,000 in year. The audits that we receive are extremely ad hoc. They're all transactionally based, not necessarily interested in the care that's been delivered, but more that the money's been spent. We're just about, this is the bit that really scares me a little bit with some of this stuff. We're sending a cheque back to one ICB for £720,000 of unspent money, and they're not aware of it because they audit that infrequently and that badly. And I do apologise. I don't want to stir the thing up here, but it's really important that as providers we get on top of this and we're able, because it's going to come, isn't it, the accountability. But the auditing just needs to get better, I think, in terms of what it's trying to do and how it does it, and focus more on what care's been delivered and less on what money's been spent.
And I agree with you. And we also work with many different ICBs, and the auditing processes are all at different times. But what I'm starting to find in contract is they're almost making it our responsibility now. You are responsible for returning surplus funds as and when. So whereas before we would be auditing every 4 or 6 weeks, whatever it was, or 3 months. The wording is slightly, they're almost putting onus on us. So I would just check your contracts when they come in to make sure it's not becoming your responsibility to do that.
Yeah,
which is
scary.
It is scary. It is scary because they will obviously hold you over the barrel when you haven't returned it. And returning a large amount of money like that is a large amount. But actually, if it was audited regularly, support plan updated, those funds could be used differently for that person or offered to other people.
And I think, Ian, we would concur with you. We've got a couple of packages whereby we regularly update that there is a very large surplus and would they like to have that money back? And we get no response. So, and I suppose that frustrates me because I kind of think, well, actually, that could help somebody else and actually that could support somebody else. And I think the package also accepts that actually that's crude. We've not needed that money, but actually over 15 years, that's now a huge amount of money that actually, if it'd gone back on a regular basis, perhaps could have helped people. But as I said, some ICBs and some councils are far more effective in their auditing. If you've purchased plasters that should not have been purchased for that package, we're being told, and they're that tight on telling us if we put a pack of plasters in wrongly because it was for the family member and not actually for the member of staff. But there are others who then we have, like yourself, got very large accounts sitting there in a bank account that perhaps need to go back.
Sorry, Claire, I know you've got your hand up. So, Chris, I think this is an area that I think quite a lot of people would welcome a little bit of discussion on because it's not it's a very grey area at the moment. Somebody's Claire, I think, put in about the bank accounts, whether it should be FCA and so on. I think it's an area that we could really add some value in as a group to start to get to grips with this, because it's somebody's going to have to start talking about this at some point.
Yeah.
And on that, I will leave it over to Claire Cluer.
Thanks, Ian.
I'm very impressed that you pronounced my surname right then. Not many people do that. And I'm also living in a building site, so if you do hear the banging, please tell me and I'll stop talking. Thank you for that. It was really helpful because I don't have that much understanding about the personal health budgets and how that works. So it's really good. And I pick up on your point about terminology and using different things. And one of the things I wanted to say was a lot of what you spoke about with direct payments is people being the employer, but we're actually trying to not give that message and give the opposite message, that actually it doesn't have to mean that for people.
Okay.
People can take a direct payment and they can purchase from an agency and they can swap and change as they want, etc. Because that we find that is one of the things that really does put people off, but actually it doesn't mean you have to be. So that was quite interesting.
No, useful to know. Yeah, no, very useful to know. Yeah. Would you want to be an employer?
Would I? When we did it for my granddad, no, we didn't. If it was somebody living in my home, yes, I would. But I just that's because I'm a bit controlling like that, so I'd want to do all the detail. Totally get why people don't want to. And the other thing was, I would be really interested if you could share your price guides. It seems like something that I'm looking at around setting up some ISFs with a day opportunities provider, are slightly different in the sense of it feels like you take the packages predominantly when somebody needs some kind of home care support, personal care support. So presumably you incorporate that management cost within sort of your hourly rates for all of the support. But the ISF that I'm going to be looking at will be where somebody attends that day service, which does have that set rate, and then they may have other elements to their package, but it may not include the day opportunity provider employing somebody. It may not include personal care. So on top of that, they will then have sort of like that management fee. So I'd be interested, I don't know whether you have any packages where you just have the management fee because you're not actually providing the staff. It's quite a different situation.
Yeah, it's a different, yes. I think it'd be worth us having a conversation for me to fully understand what it is you would like. We may not have a price guide for it. We may have to cost it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, more than welcome. My email, I can share my email and we can have a conversation and discuss what it is you're trying, what kind of service you're trying to do. Yeah. Chris, would you facilitate that? Can you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think we could probably do a whole session on almost on understanding that as well. So we've got audits, we've got the difference, because the value for money side of this doesn't get picked up very often, I don't think, because, and you sit in an interesting space because you're not an agency and you're not pure PAs, so then you're in the middle and you have an on-cost on top of that. And I know that councils and ICBs can struggle with that conceptually a little bit because there's no sort of comparative price point. So,
exactly, because there's very few who do what we do on the market, who generally do what we do. Yeah.
So if you're open to a bit of chat about that, sorry.
I was going to say, Chris, that's what's sometimes lost, as Debbie and I say, people might say, well, you're slightly more than a dom care agency. And we say, well, yes, but actually if the situation is working well and the package is calm and everything is operating great, then that's what you want, because actually you're not going into an emergency situation, you're not having an agency breakdown or whatever at that particular point in time. I'm sure Rachel will say when things are working well at home, that's what works well, and it's when it goes wrong is when you need that input at that particular point in time. Our aim is to try and keep packages steady and working on a day-to-day basis, so families and people who require the support are able to have as normal a life as possible, which is what we had wanted as a family, rather than this constant chopping and changing, which actually in the end becomes more expensive over time because you're chopping and changing all the time. But there are limitations, and there is not, I'm afraid, you know, a lovely wand where we can, you know, my brother-in-law would be turning in his grave if I could say that, you know, literally on how things now, he couldn't spend his money as he was in the early days with a PHB and what he spent it on. But you know, we recognise that things have changed and the world is different, but we try and still provide the same service, but within the constraints that we have at the moment. So
that's really interesting as well, that you just pick up about the don't want to swap and change and want the consistency, because that take on the ISF is an almost complete opposite to the take on an ISF for somebody attending a day opportunity with a learning disability, that actually the benefit of that for them is to be able to swap and change, is to be able to think, I don't want to just come here, I'm really interested in this, I want to go and do this course for 6 weeks, I want to go and try this, I want to do. So it's really interesting that depending on the needs of that person, it can look, and the benefits from it can be.
But that change isn't necessarily the I suppose when I'm saying change, it's more perhaps that support network around them, and that, you know, they can cope with changing in those different locations potentially if they've got the support network around them to support them through those changes. If they've got that changing as well as the different placement, then what we tend to find is it breaks down some ways at some point, because they become too discombobulated with the whole situation.
Yeah. Thank you. I will.
Right. Cool. Okay, so I think we've got another session kind of penciled in there, but we'll have a chat about that afterwards. Rachel, just conscious people are dropping off the call now, so I think probably this time for the last comments.
Yeah, and it was just that last bit was just last seconds, and that was about you know, as an alternative to day services. So having, I understand your teams can be 50 miles apart, you know, the people that you employ for individual people, and when you want something like a day service, they want to go and do a 6-week course at a local college or something like that, then I don't need, I use micros, by the way, self-employed local people, and I can dip in, I need you in the next couple of months, he's at a college course, so I don't need you, and so on and so forth. There isn't that worry about redundancy or not needing them and so on and so forth. So it's much easier in a self-employed micro to be able to dip in and out of micros than it is worrying about an employment contract and so forth. But it's also about pooling budgets as well. So with my son coming out of day services, there were 2 or 3 that took direct payments. There weren't individual service funds at the time. And for Greg to have his own team around him and go and do things, there wasn't, in a commission service, there wasn't ability to actually do things with other people. The provider was concentrating on just him. And yet when I had a direct payment, Greg would then pool his budget with Mark, and then pool his budget with Lisa when they go down to the pub in the evening. And so they'd only pay a third of the PA, because they pay a third each, rather than all 3 have 1 each. And there's, you know, for me, I see individual service funds. I see the opportunity perhaps for a team where somebody perhaps has passed away, or somebody you've got on your employment books, but actually being micros in where they live and being able to respond. Do you actually have to let people go, or is there an opportunity to help them set up as micros locally and be able to respond to, I need you for 3 hours a week or 4 hours a week, and then after 6 weeks those people are doing a fantastic job, doing themselves out of the job, which is the top of my contract. And then you know, they can then take on someone else rather than being stuck into an different employment contract for certain hours.
We have had pooled budgets in the past. We've had integrated budgets with some social care and health funding. I can't say we haven't used micros. We haven't considered them, probably because our clients, in terms of their health, are so complex. A lot of our clients, it's the complexity of the support they provide. It's so specific. On smaller,
but day services, you know, day opportunities,
you could use like absolutely. It would work well then.
Well, okay, right. conscious it's 10 past, but thank you guys. That's a brilliant session. Really enjoyed that. Really, really interesting. Some more interesting stuff there to dig into. So I'll be in touch with you, Ian, and obviously Claire and Debbie again about doing something around the audit and the finance and all of that stuff, because I think that's an area of mystique probably as well for a lot of people. So yeah, just say thank you very much for your time, guys. Much appreciated. I think if it's okay, we're going to share the slides.
Yes.
We'll pop the recording. We'll go out on the SDS Network website at some point in the next few days. And then I'll get in touch with you about setting up the next session.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, great. Well, thanks everyone for coming along. We'll see you at the next one.
Thank you all. Yeah.